Mary Walsh, it is so nice to see you again, even across the screen, and to get the chance to chat. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Jill. Really good to see you too.
Yeah,
And
it's been a
Carla.
minute. Carla, the producer who's hiding, who's quiet on this podcast. Yeah, I was trying to think the last time. I mean, you and I spoke certainly on CBC Radio, but I remember maybe it was our first conversation was when you came on the Jill Deacon TV show, the Jill Deacon Show, as it was called at CBC. And I know you've done so many interviews, you probably don't remember them all, but you were with Margaret Trudeau. And I want to say Andrea Martin was there too at the same time. And we were talking about mental health, which which is, I know, such a passion of yours and something that's um, one of your many hats that you wear. Um, Tell me about the role of those conversations in your life, like the importance to you of being really open and candid about struggles with mental health that so many of us go through.
Right. I have a struggle with addiction.
Mm.
Have had a struggle with addiction. I don't find myself struggling with it. But it's funny with addiction because you move off one thing and you think, oh, I'm in recovery. I'm better. I'm not drinking, not using drugs. But I seem to be shopping a lot. Or, okay, I've given up that now. I only work. I work like 18 hours a day. Could this be? And it just takes a long while to realize that you have this compulsion, this disease of running away, this disease of trying to keep life out there while you busily drink
Mm.
yourself to death, work yourself to death, shop yourself into debt. I mean, I haven't tried gambling yet, but I stay away from gambling because I know it would be disastrous. So to me, addiction is a mental health issue, and it's a big issue in my life a lot, always has been. And, I would say that our family, though I shouldn't speak for my family, but I would say that my family, on both sides of my family, have had issues with alcohol for generation after generation after generation. And
Mm.
so the way that our culture as a family is very defined by being all of us generations back being adult children of alcoholics.
Right.
I mean, we seem to fit really well in those things. So, yeah, and my son is lost, very, very, very lost in addiction. And so I
Your
could,
son is right now. You're sort of watching it in the
yeah,
next generation.
it's been going
Jeez.
on forever. And so I got on the Ministers Committee for Mental Health and Addiction here in Newfoundland. And, I remember starting, the health people here put Jesse on methadone when he was 18.
Hmm.
It was just like 18, and I remember I started a little, committee, me, a woman who later became a judge, who they put her 16-year-old granddaughter on methadone, and 2 friends, and oh my god, so much fighting, 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 fighting for my son and his life, and realizing that I wasn't getting anywhere, and thinking that if I broadened out a bit, maybe I could do something. But anyway, it's been a long, I don't know if we're getting anywhere or if we're not getting anywhere, but, yeah, so,
Mary, I mean, that's one of the I have 3 sons,
yeah.
all, old enough to drink, and I can't that's gotta be the is that even harder than dealing with your own addiction?
Oh,
What?
absolutely. I mean, that's the pain. It's not the pain of your own pain, but the pain of seeing someone you love suffer helplessly and hopelessly. And there's nothing, I mean, I've bullied and bribed and manipulated Jesse into, I don't know, about 15 different rehabs now. And,
Mm.
nothing makes any difference, that and of course, you have to come to the realization that he is on his own journey, and that no matter how much, you cry and moan and weep and beg, and what you do, no matter what I do, I have nothing to do. Maybe I had something to do with it a long time ago, but certainly I don't have anything.
Right.
I can't shift it in any way, shape, or form. God knows I've tried. I've really,
And so
really
what is
worked really hard, and
no
in some
doubt.
ways, I feel like I may have done more harm than good, you know?
Hmm. There's an unknown, my gosh. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you what one of the things I was gonna ask you just sort of, vaguely as part of this conversation is what scares you right now, and I'm sure there's a long list of things given what's happening in the world, but that's gotta be pretty close to the top. I mean, fears about your son, how do you
Oh, well, it's
juggle all
been
that?
he's 35 now, and I guess it's been about 17 years, and so, it used to be an all day, every day weeping really through most of the day when I wasn't actually working, and so that's stopped. So waking up, going to sleep, and any time during the day that I've got a few moments that I'm just sitting, breathing,
Mm,
then I'm full of anxiety and terror and all those things. And then I just, so it's things are getting better. Like I go to Naranon and I go to Al Anon and I try to take care of myself. And we're not put here to. I mean, he's a man. I mean, it's disrespectful of me to even think that I should be in there,
mm,
making things work in a certain way, or that he should be living a certain way. I mean, really, it is his choice, and I hear that message over and over again, and I try to live by it, and sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm not. So,
hmm.
do my best. I just do my best.
It's, um it's interesting what you said about people turning to addiction, of all kinds, as a way to keep life, out there. And tell me more about that because that really interests me. Having I wanted to do this podcast, these series of conversations about really how we handle hard things. And a love affair with the unknown is um, really the title sort of represents how I try to think about navigating hard things. And in my own case, it's been health stuff. And trying to find but it's true that
We're
so
doing
much of
we're
addiction is
doing a I'm doing a book. Oh no, I'm doing a book. That's done. But we're trying to put this series together called Come Home Year. And when I was 13, I got in trouble. I was living with my two maiden aunts and an uncle. Actually, one of my maiden aunts and my uncle were already dead, so I was living with just Aunt May. And I got in trouble, and she sent me back to my parents, who had given me away in the first place when I was 8 months old. And so that kind of being so getting through all of the different traumas that we so many of us go through, and much worse than mine. um I've always used, and I was just trying to make this case to the producers, that I've always used humor. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Whether it's an
Mm,
escape or not, I've always been able to laugh. It's like laughing at a funeral. I think Shelley said something, our saddest times, our sweetest songs are made of our saddest times, right? And I
mm,
think, our funniest sketches are made of our most traumatic times.
hmm.
That's the way that I've always dealt with things anyway. And
What does that feel like? I mean, what is the solace that comes from comedy for you? And being an actor, being a comedic actor especially, what does that do for your own kind of well-being in terms of how the troubles, of around us feel inside?
Well, it kind of lifts the misery, because you're laughing and you're dealing with it really, and so there you are, alive and laughing and making your living,
Hmm.
out of it. So I guess it's lifts you.
I was
That's right.
thinking of, you and, not just Mark Delahunty, but just generally being part of social commentary, political satire, programming that you've been before, do you kind of wish right now that you were still that you had a weekly political satire
I
show? I
wish
mean,
I
there's
could
so
do,
much
yeah, I
material right
do,
now.
because, I just wrote something the other day, but here's the thing, the person who was teaching cardinals to swim underwater, I think my life has been a total failure. What good is satire doing? I mean, I saw that someone was making fun of him. The Manitoba premier was signing something, and I thought, oh, don't make fun of him, because that is, he lives and breathes on that. There's no point in making fun of him. It's just more attention. And plus, I mean, it seems that he decided to be the president after Obama had done that amazingly funny job on him at the journalists thing that they have every year
Hmm.
and he made such vicious fun of Trump, and everyone who knows him said that was a turning point for him. He decided that, you know what I mean, that he would not be disrespected at that level.
Mhm.
He would not be made fun of, and it really drove him on. And
Do you
so,
think the climate is so much different now than it was when you were doing cod well, certainly Codco, but I mean 22 minutes and those I mean, it was a different time without the immediacy, and the kind of constant mockery that exists on social media everywhere.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it definitely was a different time. It was before 9/11. And 9/11 turned us into a security state where, I mean, I don't know why I didn't, if I had a few bucks, buy into security systems, because that seems to be the major thing. Like we used to be able to go into legislatures and stuff like that, and bad things didn't happen, except that we were there. But now security is everything, isn't it?
Well,
That's all
because
we
that's
care about,
another
and we're
way that
running
we've
scared. We're running scared all the time, and that's why people like him can get away with what they're getting away with, because we're all scared. And it's been a bump up since 9/11. Like the terror has gone up, the we're always up on red alert. We don't even linger around orange anymore. So
it's
fear
funny you talk
fear
about
is a much stronger driver than comedy or satire or humor
mm,
or goodness. You know what I mean? Fear is what got us to where we are now, in terms of evolutionary. Uh, our negative thoughts, the bad things that would happen to you if you didn't pay attention to the negative things, were much worse than the positive things that would happen to you if you paid attention
right.
to only the good stuff. So,
Yeah, we had
and
to
so fear
evolve
is
a
a
sense
very,
of
very, if I had my time to do over again, I wouldn't be a satirist. I'd be a purveyor of fear, because it really, really works.
well, it's true. I mean, it's just and you could argue that security systems are just another form of, as you said about addictions, where we keep the real world out there by dulling our senses and whatever with our addictions.
Yeah.
And security systems are literally a form of keeping the world out there. So you're right. It does boil down to um, our struggle with I don't know, believing that we can handle things.
Yeah, I know, I know, I know. I always used to say my family's motto was, I'm not going to be able to handle that. Uh,
That was your family's
you know,
motto.
yeah, yeah, I'm not going to be able to handle that. Yeah. But there you are, 70 years old, and you've handled so much. But
You've
oh
handled
yeah, but
so
not this, not
much.
this. But
I also wanted to ask you, speak as somebody who has, say what you will about this social media climate and the ratcheting up of fear and so on, and how that's perhaps changed things. But there's a lot of people talking sort of
it's
specifically
not like we
about,
weren't fearful before. I
well,
mean,
that's right.
it's like,
And you chose,
this we are human beings. We have lived in terror and fear. It's like Ursula Le Guin says, but we think that this is it. This is now the thing. Like she says, we once thought that the divine right of kings was it. And there was nothing we
right,
could do about it, and no way we could change it. And then, of course, it got changed because it was created by human beings and could be changed by human beings.
and
And
change is
this kind of
inevitable.
soup of fear we're living in now, that was created by human beings, and that can be changed by human beings too. But it's just like, so I read somewhere, but what can I do? I'm only one person, said 7 billion people.
What about the people who have a platform right now? I mean, people have been complaining lately that Hollywood, for example, when it has the global spotlight, a billion or whatever number of people watching the Oscars and various other awards programs, and the Oscars specifically took some flack, in commentary afterwards for being utterly toothless, and nobody
Except that the
took
Best
that
Picture was
platform.
won by an independent film that cost $6 million, which would be a very expensive film in Canada, but not nothing in America. And it's made by a guy who has traditionally, constantly made films about the underclass. So, and
Sure,
they
that
took all the awards. So, though
yes.
they didn't say anything, they said something, I think,
Okay, that's a
very
good way to look
profound.
at it.
Yeah.
I just mean, individuals standing up and sort of,
But who wants to
again, with
hear
a
that anymore?
really?
Well, I mean,
I
Ricky
feel like
Gervais.
people are angry and they want to hear that
I don't
those
think
sort
people
of
wanna hear that.
comments.
I think that the people who I mean, Ricky Gervais said, just that you would just work with, what's his name, Weinstein, if he called you tomorrow. So just shut up and
Oh,
come up and take your fucking award and go on. And to many people feel that way. So I think it was a much more profound statement to give the largest award and the largest numbers of awards to an independent film that was made about a stripper. And his movies Tangerine, which was about trans people, starring trans people. His movie, The Florida
the Florida
Project, made
Project,
about that
mhm.
little girl and her single mother who were living hand to mouth in Kissimmee, right next to the wall, next to Disneyland.
The theme
I
park,
mean,
yeah.
it was a profound thing, I think, that they gave the Academy Award to him.
That's interesting. I thought you might be more, as somebody who has sort of punched hard at directly at in character, sometimes, in the form of Marg or whatever other roles on 22 Minutes, but has punched directly, and been outspoken about political actions, whether you agree with them or not. I thought you would have lamented the lack of sort of speaking out by those stars. But I hear your point. I take your point that
Yeah,
perhaps the bigger message is the film that did win the accolades.
maybe. Yeah, maybe. All the speaking out has got. This is where we are. You know what I
So
mean? Maybe it's time for a new way. I don't know.
I wanted you. We talked about your activism, your list of the hats that you wear. In fact, this is what you list on your Instagram profile: Newfoundland actor, writer, director, producer, comedian, and activist. Tell me about the creative, I guess, unknown that you leap into, um, sort of shape shifting from one creative project to another. I mean, you've written a novel in 2017. You wrote "Crying for the Moon." You wrote a play, "But I Don't Want to Come Home," year 1966. People know you're in film. Talk about independent films. You've been in lots of independent films. You have your activism. Tell me about that sort of shape shifting, and what drives you from what fuels your one project to the next, that leap into the next creative unknown.
Well, here's the thing. If you live subsistence, which we have for 500 years here on this island, and perhaps not as much in the last 70, say, you have to learn to do everything. So when we came back from Toronto as Codco in 1972 or 3, I can't remember which now, we had to do all the jobs. Just like when the RCMP killed all the Inuit dogs in Nunavut. Um, they had to learn how to take apart and put back together again bombardiers or skidoos or whatever they then had to use because they couldn't use sled dogs anymore. So having known everything about sled dogs, they suddenly had to know everything about, because if they didn't, they would die. So they had to. So all of a sudden, and Dad used to say Newfoundlanders who'd never seen electricity, when the Yanks got here in the 40s or late 30s, building the bases, they would put out an ad for people to be electricians, and men who had never seen electricity would go in, learn it very quickly on the job because you needed to know it, and so that thing of putting your hand to every job is kind of traditional here anyway, and so that we would do it also seems pretty well just par for the course.
And and how do you decide? I mean, I guess that speaks to your ability to be able to do all those things, but your creative sort of pull towards, yeah, I think I read that you wanted since you were a teenager to write a novel, and then you went ahead and did it. And then okay, now I'm going to write a play, or I mean, oh, now I'm going to star in this TV show, or what is I guess the driver from one project to the next?
Again, I have
It's
this
just
is
whatever
so
opportunity
boring.
comes
I'm
along.
sorry, Jill, but again, I mean, and I'm being so boring. Again, I'm a
That's not
freelance
the thing that
artist,
happens.
so I
Mary
just
Walsh and
have to
boring don't go
do
in the same
everything I
sentence.
can to get by. So, Five TV is spending money in Atlantic Canada because the pandemic is on. I hear about that. I also happen to read Dave Sullivan's things on Facebook, which are make me laugh all the time. I put the two together. I think we should do this. We'll get the money from Five TV. You reach out to a number of people, then you gather together Dave's thing. You have a meeting. You decide to do it, and then you do 4 seasons of the Mrs. Downstairs. Like
Mhm.
becoming the Mrs. because who else is going to do it? And because there's no money in it because it's five. And Belle, Belle has no money anyway. But the and I guess to a certain extent you keep going because you have to keep going because I suppose I don't have to now because I could just retire. But what would be the point of my retiring? I don't see that as any good. I figure I'm just going to get all my big Hollywood jobs now when Margot Martindale dies, because I could definitely do all the stuff she's doing. But the but
The maple
you
syrup
do it you
sequel?
do it because that's what you have to do. I always wanted to be a writer. I just finished another book for HarperCollins. Unfortunately, what they wanted me to do was write. They asked me to do it. I would never have suggested it myself. They asked me to write a book of essays that were kind of a memoir.
Mm.
It's like, I don't want to do that. It's like, like, oh my God. I just got the last one in on Friday past, the end of March. So I was actually a year and 4 months late because I just didn't want to do it. I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want
Why
to go.
not? What didn't
Well,
you
first
want?
of
What
all, being an alcoholic for 25 years, like, you go, oh, in Codco, it was going really well, but I was really unhappy. And, I was just really pissed off with everything. And then, oh, this hour's 22 minutes it was really popular, but oh, I was really unhappy. And you're like, it's just
you're
like,
bored with
oh,
your own
shut
narrative.
up. And like Rick Mercer has written, I don't know how many memoirs, and Mark Critch the same way. And I haven't read them because I figure it's 40 is way too young to write a memoir. Of course, just remember Justin Bieber wrote his memoir when he was like 13 or something. And then
Yes.
Mark,
He's an
we used
exception.
to be really good friends with Gordon Pinsent, had Gordon come on and read the memoir. It was really a great, great, great idea and great sketch. But yeah, but I get the feeling from watching some of Son of a Critch that, you know, that they didn't have the kind of being given away at 8 months old and never really getting over that, and struggling with addiction, and just all the, I don't know, I feel like they had a more but then when I read Sarah Polly's book of essays,
Essays.
I had
Yeah,
no idea that Sarah
that's an
Polly had
inspiration.
that kind of chaotic and miserable. I just thought, you look at people and go, "Oh yeah, she was like her mother was a an agent. So she had one of those middle class, upbringings, and everything was tickety boo. It's funny though, isn't it? How you think, look at everybody and go, oh yeah, their life is tickety boo. They don't suffer like I do, But of course, the nonsense.
Measuring other people's what's that great line? We
Yes,
tend to
other
measure other
people's
people's outsides in comparison with our insides.
insides. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
love that too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
But I
you
do that
t
all the time.
do you think it's maybe that you don't take yourself seriously enough to think, "Oh, who wants to hear my same old stories?" Like, you're funny and you
I
find
like to
ways
tell
to
my
talk.
stories and fictionalize them. Use some of the things from my life, and because it's so much easier to be truthful, I think, with fiction. Fiction tells the truth, and memoirs are kind of like, well, I can't say that because that'd be saying something about, and then they'd be hurt. And, like you almost can't say how intense your feelings of hatred were for certain people because it would be
Although they s
too terrible. So you have to kind of go, well, it was a difficult relationship because I was difficult and they were difficult, and then and so you have to. But if it was fictional, you could have your character intensely hate this other character who very much resembled somebody who you may have known, but would be an amalgamation of people who you knew, different people who you knew, and your heroine could be an amalgamation of you and others who you know. You know what I mean? Whereas
Mhm.
you have to be so careful when you're
You think you had to be
actually,
more careful when because it was nonfiction.
yeah.
Ian Brown, who was my editor, in a creative nonfiction program I did at the Banff Writing Center one time. He said he said the rule to writing memoir, and he's written a lot of very successful, critically acclaimed, award-winning, creative nonfiction memoir. He says you have to somebody has to get mad at you. Like in other words, I can't remember, he words it better than that, but the idea that somebody has to be pissed off. You can't be afraid of what other people might say. But it's a hard
But who
thing.
is
It's
who
really
is
hard
pissed
thing to
off with
do.
him when he wrote the book about his
The Boy and
son?
the Moon.
Yeah,
I
who's
don't
pissed
know.
off with him about that?
I
I read that. I didn't hear anything about anyone that would make them pissed off. It just
no.
he
I,
was talking about the heartbreak of being, and the joy also of being
mhm.
that child's father, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it's easy to say and it's really really hard to do to
Yeah.
write about people in your life
If they're
and
dead, it's okay.
right.
But then the
So you've
terrible
just
thing is if
finished.
they're dead, they have children. And I'm not interested. I mean, maybe I like Ian Brown very much, but I'm really that isn't one of the things that I'm really interested in is hurting people. I feel I've done enough of that in my lifetime. I don't need to do any more. I don't want to set out to make people feel bad about something or angry or upset. I mean, maybe HarperCollins will never publish it because I didn't make enough people angry with me. But that's not, I
Well,
mean, I don't see that as, well, I'm 72. So, like one of the last things I write, like, just
right. Do you
sets
want it to
everybody
be
in a
something that
tizzy about,
sets your
I
past on
I
fire?
start to settle scores like that
Mm,
happened to me when I was 13, and I
mm.
mean, what do I want to do that for? Like, you know, and who's interested in that? Well, I guess people. It would be, probably a better book to read in some way. I mean, there would be more drama, say, but
But you did it. You finished the last
yeah,
essay and it's going out coming out from HarperCollins.
yeah, yeah, yeah. In a year, I guess, from
I
Friday,
know. Book
maybe.
publishing is a slow
Yeah,
process,
slow,
as
slow,
you
slow.
know.
But luckily, because, I was a year and 4 months late. But my first book, I was late, and Iris, my editor, said, "Well, don't feel bad because I had to wait 6 years for the Book of Negroes from,
Lawrence Hill.
yeah." And she said it was so worth it. And I thought,
It was
"Oh, I'm
worth
not
waiting
going to
for.
be writing the Book of Negroes. I mean, come on, that's not. I am not him. I'm not Lawrence
Adjust
Hill."
your expectometer,
Yeah,
lady.
yeah, yeah. Adjust your expectometer. Yeah.
Tell me, you said you're 72. What do you think, And I love what you said about, why would I retire? I mean, it sounds like you're not really thinking too much about your age as other than a number, a thing on your birth certificate. You're just soldiering on doing the things.
Oh, I'm happier than I've ever been.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and more comfortable and everything, and I think that that's, they have actual scientific proof that the older you are, the happier you get. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be Susie Sunshine. It's just that you're gonna be happier than you were when you were 40. Like, there's like a graph, like, you kind of have those happy years, and then you go into a terrible decline, and it kind of levels out around 50, and you start to climb up again, and certainly that's I found that to be the case in my life.
Do you know what can you think of why that is? In your case? I mean, the science, I suppose, supports it, but what do you
Yeah, the
think it is
science
for
supports
you?
it. I think because, you just it's a hard job coming into the world and learning how to be in the world and who you are and what you are and where you are and trying to and people like in their 40s and 50s are squat in between their children and their parents and trying to take care of everything and then as you age, of course, there's more like I still have a lot of ambition and stuff. So,
Hmm.
but it's not as deadly as it was before. Like now, my ambition when I was younger would have been to make the most popular book and hurt the most people I could, if that's what it took. What does it
Mm.
take? I'll do that then. You know what I mean? Whereas now, I feel like I would like to be more true to my own feelings about who I want to be and what I want to be in the world and what I'd like to leave behind in the world rather than to get somewhere, you know what I mean? So I think that that's that evening off of thinking you have to get somewhere, like you have to learn to walk, then you have to learn to talk, then you have to learn to do this, then you have to pretend you know everything, which is what I did for years, and know nothing and be able to learn nothing. And so since I've recovered from addiction, I've been learning a lot of things, and I remember the first season we were doing the Mrs. Downstairs. I thought we were having such fun, and I thought, oh, this is not going to be any good. We're just enjoying ourselves too much, and so it won't be any good. Then I had the next thought, which was that, but even if it isn't any good, we will still have had this great time doing it. And it was really it went really well anyway. But you know what I mean? But before I got
Absolutely.
sober, I would never have been able to have that thought. But even if nobody likes it, we still had this time, this wonderful time
Mm.
together doing this. And it doesn't, not being successful doesn't take that away.
I love that, and in a way, it's sort of, I think it's, tied in a little bit with the idea of the way getting older, because I think about this too, affects our sense of control and what we can and can't control and
Yeah.
how we feel about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you maybe sounds like maybe what you're saying is I can't control whether this becomes a hit, and I don't want to go to all the lengths that it might take. I just want to enjoy what I'm doing, and the rest is maybe beyond my scope.
Yeah, learning your own limitations because I didn't, even though I felt very bad about myself and not didn't have much self-respect, I still never I often when I'd get in trouble, it's when I'd go too far. I would just go too far because then I didn't have any idea that, there's I can only do this amount and I try to do more than I could do and achieve more than I could achieve. And those were times when I always got in trouble, right? I just went, out on a limb and then past the limb and down to the ground, so yeah. Anyway, and getting older, there's so limited amount of time left. And so in a way, I feel like everything they say, those cliches like familiarity breeds contempt. With me, that isn't the way things are at all. Familiarity, I'm so mistrusting of people that when I don't know people, I'm afraid. I live in a lot of fear still. And so I'm very afraid. And familiarity breeds love and acceptance for me. And it's the same with when I had a lot of time ahead of me, it was so overwhelming. Like, what am I going to do? What can I achieve? Where can I get? Like blah blah blah. Oh no, I'll never be able to get there, and everybody else is getting there, and I'm never. Huge amounts of unhappiness. Whereas now I have so little time left. And like I look in the mirror, and when I looked in the mirror in my younger years, I think, oh my God, my eyes are so small, my lips are so thin, I'm just terrible. And now I look in the mirror, I go, oh my God, I look like an old woman. And then I have this comforting thought of, well, I am an old woman. So, this is pretty good. So, you know what I mean? Acceptance, self acceptance, I think, happens to all of us as we age. If we're lucky enough to get old, we do achieve a certain level of self acceptance, right?
That's so interesting to frame that in the context of things you're afraid of. And there's just less time left, less possibility left, and
Right.
therefore it's more kind of predictable and therefore more familiar, and therefore you're okay with it.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's also kind of hilarious, and I know, and again, this is about the outside, comparing outsides to insides, but it is sort of hilarious to hear Mary Walsh talk about, worrying that she wouldn't be that I'm not good enough, or I haven't, this isn't good enough, or I'm not a success enough here, because of course those are your inside feelings, and from the outside, people think of you as this award-winning, iconic Canadian celebrity who's held truth to power and or spoke held power to account and spoken your truth. And I mean, you kind of don't read on the outside the way it sounds like you've
I
sometimes felt
know,
on
I
the
know, I
inside. But I
know.
know that's always the case
That's
for all
always
of
the
us.
case, isn't it? It's just so, operating from fear, even though the way you operate from fear is to come out, with the claws out like a rat in a corner, it still doesn't help. I mean, you could have, or you could go the other way, the shrinking way, or the coming out all guns blazing, but you're still being driven by fear. And so it still is no good. You know what I mean? It's like you would like to, I mean, not that it's no good. I don't mean, I'm not trying to, dismiss all the things in my life, but it still is coming from enormous fear, right?
Hmm.
Like when the rat, comes out of the corner at you, it isn't that the rat is brave; it's that the rat is driven to
Yeah.
survive and thinks this is the only way to do is to fight. And so 24 hours a day, 7 days a week fighting, it's exhausting. But anyway, yeah, yeah. So like you get a bit older and you realize that a lot of the fighting that you did was unnecessary and foolish, and that you probably never were that rat in the corner anyway, and
Right.
and what good did your fear do? Like,
Hmm.
I suppose it's done a lot of good. It's part. I mean, you can't get rid of it because it helps us to
It
live.
can be a
It's like
motivator
pain.
forward.
What?
Mhm. Yeah, it can be a motivator,
Yeah.
forward, but yeah, it's certainly how we deal with fear. Tell me what, just before I let you go, in the spirit of this love affair with the unknown, as we're kind of calling this, there's so many unknowns in the bigger world right now. I mean, I hear you saying there's fewer in your own circle of your life, and that sense of aging sort of shrinking those unknowns, but these are uncertain times, to say the least. And tell me about how, I think people would be interested to know, and I'm interested to know how Mary Walsh, you've touched on this. You say, okay, comedy is sort of what is my salve, and it helps me feel lighter in heavy times, and and so on. But how are you handling sort of the daily barrage of unknowns, and trying to find, whether it's from, your son and his struggles, the world around us, the big, however big the scale, how do you think about all those unknowns and how to forge forward?
In the pandemic, I had to stop listening to the reports every day when we were locked down because I realized there was nothing I could do about them, and so what was the point of my knowing, and I actually. ended up enjoying the pandemic. I mean, enjoying the pandemic. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to say in the face of all the suffering that was caused by the pandemic. But for me, the pandemic let me be. I wasn't as frantic all the time because nobody else was like so relaxing. Nobody's getting ahead, and neither am I. That's perfect. We're all together. So in a way, I try in that way that Aunt May used to always say, it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. And
Mm.
so I try to get as much goodness out of it as I can. And I think, the thing that I hope is that we have always looked to America to tell us who we are. We've always, certainly in our business, if you're on in America, then you must be really good. People come back from LA and keep their 310 number just so that people think they're working in Los Angeles, they're working in America. And so in a way, we've always felt, and we've had to be that way, I guess, as the mouse next to the elephant. I mean, the elephant could give a shit what the fuck the mouse is doing. You know what I mean? But the mouse is, copper fastened on what the elephant is up to, like, because you have to be for survival. But it seems to me that this great betrayal, that we thought, when they wanted land, they took Texas. Then they went to war with Mexico. Then they took 55,000 miles of Mexican land to turn it into California and places like that. And they've been punishing Cuba for the temerity to stand up for their own rights for I don't know how many years now, 50, 60 years. Cuba is still suffering. And somehow or other, we sort of felt like not us, not us. They definitely won't turn on us because it's we. When you say the U.S., often you think, oh, it spells us. So somehow or other, the good that might come out of this is that we finally stop saying cut the CBC and and only have Netflix and you know what I mean, and why should we make Canadian movies, and why it seems that the right in this country have forever been trying to say that we are the 51st state, so why don't we just lie down and bend over and take it like the vicar. So I think that this may be a push towards us growing up in a way, like we've been adolescent in a way, like we haven't liked our own things, we haven't liked our own, in that way that you hate your parents, you hate your house, you wish somebody, you'd be anybody else. And in a way, we've felt like that for a long time, and maybe this betrayal from the people who we've looked to define us for so long, maybe this will force us into a situation where we will go, yeah, that's who we are. Yeah, that's who we are. That's how we came about. We have no big mythological beginnings. We didn't have a Wild West. We had the Mounties. Like
Mm.
this is who we are, and we're all right with that. You know what I mean? Like as you get older, sometimes that happens to you. Maybe that will. And I have found that getting really sick and ending up in hospital and not being able to get a job, and thinking like that, all those things have contributed to a sense of acceptance of myself and my own limitations and who and what I am, and maybe that's what's going to happen to us too.
Mm.
I
It
don't know.
I love what you just said, not least because honestly, Mary Walsh, listening to your your voice is just good for the soul. You just make me smile. Just the sound of your voice. This has been a delicious experience. But also, it strikes me that the your heart beats brightly, and it's probably what makes you lean into comedy and laughter as a way through hard things. And your decision to believe in your Aunt May's idea of no, it's an ill wind that blows no good. Like to find the to choose to pay attention to the possibility,
Yeah, just the
the
possibility.
upside
Yeah.
throughout really hard things, that I think that speaks a lot to you. So, and that's a lovely message.
And my last thing is that my father was born in 1898. He joined up the British Navy when he was 16. His mother hauled him back because she already had two boys overseas in the First World War. And then he took off again in a week and joined the Merchant Marine. Like as somebody said, is just bringing potatoes into dangerous ports without even a cute uniform. And then he came home, and then there was, of course, the Great Depression. And then there was the Second World War, which he went to again. And then there was, like in Newfoundland, there was tuberculosis and polio and all these pandemics and all this sickness and all these emergencies. And he never really spoke of that at all, like of all those things that he went through. He did speak of going to sea a lot, but you know what I mean? Like always we have been putting up with that is what life is. I mean,
Right. We're naive if we think that A, we're the first generation to have to go through something existential and
yeah,
challenging,
yeah,
and B, this, but yeah, historically this happens, and change is inevitable, and sometimes we don't like it, but we ride through it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
With a
I
with
think
a
so. I mean, I think that's the lesson that we get from our ancestors, right?
hmm. Such a pleasure to talk with you about all of this, Mary. You're amazing.
That's wonderful. Wonderful to see you again, Jill. You're looking really well, I've got to say.
Well, distance and screen filters perhaps helping, but anyways, thank you. No,
But
I'm learning. One of
the
my
thing
one of
is,
my
Jill,
mottos for the
you've got to
year
say
was to say
thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Yes,
Thank you very
yes.
much.
I'm learning to say thank you to compliments, just full stop. So thank you, Mary. It's been a thrill, and all the best. We look forward to that memoir when it comes out, and all the other amazing projects yet in
Okay.
store from
Thank
you.
you, Jill. Take care,
Cheers.
darling.